Welcome to Loading the Bar with physical training experts Parker McBride and Matt Wasco. Our Fit Lifestyle podcast covers the science of nutrition and fitness, together with the challenges we all face to be disciplined. We'll guide you through the minefields of fads and gimmicks and all manner of BS that tempt us in today's fitness world. Ready to begin? Then let's start loading the bar.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Loading the Bar podcast. Parker McBride here, joined as always by my co-host, Matt Wasco. How's it going today, Matt?
Good. We were talking earlier. I woke up yesterday, and so it's not a big deal to anybody else, but it's a big deal to me. I gained 1 pound. So I'm excited about that, because it's been about 12 weeks of sitting at 212. And so adding dextrose and pasta to my diet, or basically it's rice, I've added a pound. So I'm kind of pumped up about that, because I've been really trying to gain weight, and I finally decided to add those two elements.
Finally maybe breaking through that plateau a little bit.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
You've been working at that a while.
I have been working at that a while, and it kind of showed up in the gym this morning. I was able to do something I hadn't done before in the gym this morning, not on a flat bench, but with the dumbbells. You know, I took the 130s for 13, and that I've always just gotten to 12. So I was like, okay, all right, 1 pound heavier, one more rep. You know, not that it necessarily correlates, but I haven't done that many before. So,
well, what's interesting about that is you're having to put in so much effort to gain weight.
Yeah.
And most people, especially at your age, are kind of the opposite. They're putting in a ton of effort to try to not gain weight. So that's interesting. And I know we've talked on past episodes a little bit about some of your habits and things, and there are reasons why you're in this position, but that's such a good position to be in instead of the other side.
Right. Yeah.
And it's another really cold day here. Man, it's kind of starting to feel like Groundhog Day a little bit.
Oh, should we talk about our predictions?
Well, I mean, we both got it right.
Yeah.
Chiefs won.
Yeah.
Last week's episode, it was the day of the Chiefs playoff game against the Dolphins, and we both predicted a Chiefs victory, and it came to fruition.
So, Buffalo Bills, what's your prediction?
Oh, Chiefs got to get this one again. Maybe a little more high scoring. I'll go like 27-20.
27-20 Chiefs?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got this is going to be the game that Chiefs either kind of come out of their funk, because offensively they've been this kind of, par, or not even below par, not what they're capable of doing, and because of errors and receiving issues and all that. So I'm nervous about this game, but I'm gonna lean towards the Chiefs 23-20, but I can, I'm nervous about this game
With some skepticism.
Yeah, with some skepticism, So
well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So today we're bringing you episode 5. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to center our discussion around longevity. So longevity has kind of been a really hot trend among the fitness world, or just kind of the world in general. How can we keep ourselves in better shape longer into our lives? Right. How can we make sure as we get older that we're staying healthy, that we're staying in shape, we're staying active, we're staying able, and it's not just trying to live a really long life, right? I mean, everyone wants to live a long life, but we want to live a quality life for a very long time,
right?
Because it doesn't really do any good to live to 100 if your last 20 years you can't do anything anyway,
Right.
So we want to keep that quality of life as far down the road as we can.
Right.
And that's kind of what I want to focus on today.
Sounds good.
All right. So there are a few different things how we can approach this, because you've obviously got some different categories, like your activity, what should that look like? Your nutrition, what should that look like? Your habits, different things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about exercise, your activity that you do as you get older, and how that changes. Because one of the things people will know is that as you get older, it's a lot harder to hold on to lean body mass, to hold on to muscle mass. When you're young, your muscle kind of sticks around. You can build it very easily. As you age, your ability to build it goes down, and your ability to lose it if you don't work out and exercise increases.
Right.
And I don't know what your experience has been with that as you've gotten older. How have the challenges been in building muscle and then holding on to it compared to when you were younger?
More difficult. The key, young or old, the key is consistency. But I do notice that the younger you are, the easier it is to put on. Mm-hmm. And but the king in this whole thing, as far as the key component to anyone adding muscle mass, and if you wanted to get stronger, is being consistent, day in, day out. Good sleep, good eating, consistent with your workouts. That is paramount, and understanding, understanding what it takes. Like if you're adding muscle mass and you want to throw creatine on there, creatine has to be every day. It can't be like, hey, I'm going to take creatine on the days that I work out. So you have to understand those principles, what is going to get the body stronger, what is going to add muscle mass, and being consistent about it. Because it's not like PEDs where, hey, I can kind of be, not work as hard and have the muscle, right? When you're doing it all natural, every day is a day that is focused on health. And trying to take days off, there's cheat days. I get that. Like, hey, I'm going to go have a couple beers, or hey, I'm going to go have my weakness, which is movie popcorn, right? With the toxic butter. I have that like once every 6 months, because I think that's somewhat therapy for the mind. But outside of that, being very, very consistent, and that's even more paramount as you get older.
Well, in consistency, like you talk about with your workouts, but something you brought up right at the beginning, I want to go back to. You brought up sleep, mm-hmm. And it's easy to say, well, yeah, you need to get enough sleep and then move on. But sleep is so important because it is huge in your recovery.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that changes as you get older is your ability to recover goes down, right? I know, and I'm a lot busier now than I was a few years ago. But a few years ago, when I was like 20 years old, I could go in the gym 6 days a week, 2 hours a day, work out really, really hard that whole time. And I didn't have to get that good a night's sleep. I didn't have to eat that well. And I could still recover really well, right, and be ready to go again the next day and just fine, and do that week after week after week after week, and never wear my body down. That changes as you get older, yes, right? And like you talk about with the consistency of the habits, you need sleep to recover. You can't just work out really hard and then expect to be able to get a poor night's sleep and then come back and do it over again the same the next day. So as you get older, as we talk about maintaining your ability as time goes on, you need to get a really solid, good night's sleep. That's one component of it. We'll talk about sleep a little bit. I want to touch on what's your experience been with making sure that you can get a good night's sleep, because that's important, and it's easy to say get a good night's sleep, but how do we actually do that?
Well, I can take, because this happens to everyone, is that they get accustomed to a sleep schedule. And there'll be an event or something changes in their life, and suddenly they have to change that sleep schedule. So you've adapted to a schedule. The body's adapted to a schedule, and it's used to bed at this time and up at this time, and I eat at this time. And so the body is used to, hey, this is when I'm eating. Hey, this is when I'm sleeping. And so we have those periods where suddenly that changes and you have to adapt. And so I think we have the one issue that happens in life, that when you aren't consistent, there are negative impacts or negative effects. And those negative effects, as you get older, can be even more traumatic, or more, not traumatic, that's a kind of a strong word, but
Detrimental?
Detrimental, yes. And for me, when I'm not consistent, I get really bad migraines. I have to have routine in my life, because then my water intake isn't good, my sleep isn't good. And when those water intake and sleep get messed up, that's when I'm more prone to get migraines. And those are a reminder that those are like, suffering is a discipline,
Yeah.
and there's all kinds of things that are negative impacts as far as the choices we make. And as you get older, they can become more pronounced. So I think it's just understanding the benefits that come with being consistent.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would say that becomes easier as we get older, it's harder as we get older to reap some of the benefits of our consistency, right? Because your body, you have to work a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. But what gets easier is that I don't have let's put it this way, I don't have to tantalize my taste buds all the time, right? I don't have to have a great variety to my diet.
Why would you say that changes as you get older?
Because of the benefits. I don't know. I think it's just because as I gotten older, I've just really worked on, I've seen the benefits of being consistent. But if you're trying to add variety into your diet, like every single day, every single meal, then it becomes a headache.
Yeah.
It becomes too much work. So having a meal plan that's not too varied makes it easier.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't know if I've broken that, or with age and wisdom, I've decided that just eating 10 eggs a day, I'm fine with that. Or eating red meat every day. I eat pretty much the same thing every day. I mean, if I didn't have a family, my fridge would be eggs, milk, red meat, and a little bit of fish and smoothies. That's it. I mean, that's what I'm eating all the time. And all the other stuff that's in that fridge is all the other family, right? Yeah. But that's all I eat. I could survive on that. Just eggs, red meat.
I could too.
Yeah.
Well, that's this month's what I'm doing with carnivore, kind of surviving on eggs, red meat, dairy. That's interesting. It kind of made me think of something when I was hearing you talk there. The word boring came to mind. Mm-hmm. It all sounds very boring, but boring works. Yeah. And boring maybe is the key to longevity, right? Get up the same time every day. Go to bed the same time every day. Train your body when it's supposed to sleep. Train your body when it's supposed to be awake. Train your body when to eat. Train it what it's going to eat. I think there's something to, you talk about eating the same thing every day. And I noticed that, we talked about processed foods a lot last week in our nutrition podcast. And we talked about how, when you're eating them every day, you don't really notice it. And then if you stop eating them for a long period of time and you go back to eating them, then you really feel it.
Yeah.
Part of that reason is because your body, when you stop eating it, your body becomes not used to eating it.
Right.
And so there's a certain level of efficiency where your body says, okay, this is what we're used to eating. This is what we're going to get good at processing. And that's going to make it easier. And so by eating the same thing every day, your body starts to become more and more efficient with breaking down that food, processing that food, and it gets it in its routine.
Right.
And it's so much easier than getting something different every day. And your body's surprised by like, oh, now today it's this. Okay, well, how do we do this? And tomorrow it's a new thing. How do we do that? Instead, it can just say, oh, yep, that's what we expected. Here come the eggs right in the morning at the same time.
Right.
Right. And I think that just makes it so much easier on the body. And there's less effort having to be put into other things. Because if you eat something brand new that you don't normally eat, your body has to put resources to figuring out, okay, what is this? How do we break it down? What do we need to do? And that's less resources going towards other things in your body, like keeping you healthy.
Right. Yeah, I think, there's enough things going on in life, for me to have where every meal has to be something, like I'm going out to eat, it's too much, and I need the simplicity of life. There's something to be said that we don't have in society, and that is simplicity of life and silence. These are two things that are missing in our lives. We complicate our lives constantly by the choices that we make. And I'm as much victim as anybody else. But as I get older, I keep thinking about, okay, let's put the phone down. Okay, focus on my wife, my kids, play Monopoly with my child, these simple things, right? And I'm mentioning family in that is that it's a mindset, right? Simplify your life with how you approach life, how you approach eating, and stop trying to make every night has to be like some pomp and circumstance type of situation, right? There is value in simplicity and how you approach things. If you make things and being boring, right? I mean, and this is what I deal with constantly with my clients is that, I talked to him about, what you need to do, what you need to eat. And he goes, hey, I've been eating red meat and fish. I don't want to eat it anymore. And it's like, then I'll talk to him. Well, there's different ways to cook it,
And season
it. And so I think the younger generation struggles with this more. I think as people get older, they get a little more consistent, or they realize, usually because of health issues, they have to eat a little more cleaner.
Well, I think it's an attention span thing.
Yes.
I've noticed with my generation, the younger generation, that we have a lot lower attention span. Stuff's flashed in front of our faces a lot more frequently. Growing up, commercials, TV thing. I mean, do you ever sit down? I don't really get to do this much. I maybe will be in the future now that I'm going to have a child. But you sit down and with a little kid to watch their cartoons nowadays, and it's just insane. There's like new stuff flashing on the screen every 2 seconds, and it's all over the place, and you can't keep track of it, and there's no storyline to follow, and it's like no wonder their attention spans are the way they are.
Yeah.
But see, then whenever you get older, that lack of attention span, now you can't really be dedicated and focus on anything for a long period of time. And you always want to change up. You always want something different. I need something new, something stimulating to eat. I need a different new workout. That's the same thing we find with people in their workouts is, that simplicity and that boring that you talked about applies directly to your workouts as well.
Right.
Sometimes the simple thing and the boring thing is the best thing for you to do and the most efficient. Because I one time I was talking to a guy who was a beginner in the gym, and basically what was happening was every workout he was kind of doing a brand new set of exercises, a bunch of stuff he hadn't really seen before. And I kind of told him, you're having to kind of relearn everything every time. And if you're somebody who you need different stuff, okay. But that's very inefficient to have to come in and say, okay, now let's learn how to do this. Let's put our body through it for the first time. And it's going to be our body's first time doing it. I mean, you're going to be a lot less efficient at it the less amount of times you've done it versus just coming in and saying, okay, last week we did this. This week, let's do the same thing so that we can progress and get better at it.
Right.
And do that week after week after week, and you'll see a lot more progress than trying to learn something brand new every day.
Right.
And when it comes to working out, and the idea of progressive overload, that is, hey, every time you do this, every time you work out, do a little bit more weight, do a little bit more reps, get a little bit more challenging, and then just keep stacking that on week after week after week, month after month, and you get so much more progress in the long run than if you just try to change it up and do something completely different every time. And I think it is a balance, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're so sick and tired of doing this same workout every week that you quit because you're like, I don't want to go to the gym anymore because this workout's so boring. But yet you don't want to throw in variety just for the sake of throwing in variety. It doesn't actually help you. It actually hinders you.
Well, I think you hit upon something. I think I call it the FedEx generation, where not only is it I want something now, but I want to be entertained right now. And that affects every phase of our life. And that's something that, we're all affected by it. I've made some conscious efforts, and I will continue to make conscious efforts to detach, because they've proven that because of the way TV is and phones are, and that constant, hey, I need to be entertained, it causes memory loss. They've connected those dots because your brain can't stay on one topic long enough, and it actually starts to cause actual memory loss. And, I think that it's a symptom of our, the devices we hold and how we run our lives, and, people looking for the next event, the next trip, the next movie, the next book, and not any of those things being wrong within themselves, but there's something to be said for, the quiet moments, reflected upon yourself. And when you have that internal peace, a lot of times people don't want to sit in silence because then they have to start answering questions they don't want to answer about themselves or deal with issues about themselves. And so then that manifests in ways of how we can't stay on a routine. We have to be varied all the time. So it's more of where it's what the having variety in our lives and always having to do something different and new is usually a symptom of being bombarded. As soon as we walk out this door, everything, the way marketing hits us, the way we use our phones to what we watch, our brains never get a chance to shut down.
It's a constant intake of information. Constant intake of all this information from all these different directions. Yet we never really give ourselves the opportunity to process the information and just sit and reflect on it. I think that's something that I've found is very important for me is you go through this long day of constantly information. You don't have the time to process it as it comes in because it comes in so quickly. If I can sit down of an evening for 30 minutes or an hour even and just think about all the stuff that happened and process it and make decisions, based on the stuff that's happened and come to thoughts, come to conclusions, I end up being able to sleep so much better. I think that's how people's sleep problems is.
Yes.
It's information, and then when does their mind finally start processing it? When they lay down to go to sleep. And so then they're like, I was up, my mind was running for 2 hours, I couldn't go to sleep. Well, that's because your mind needed to run in order to process all that information, and you didn't let it do it while you were still awake.
That's right. That's exactly right. I have, people in my family that struggle with the same thing, watching too much internet or news, and then thinking about their life or the monster that's around the corner, and then when they try to go to sleep they can't turn it off. And I think that they're having simplicity to, and this is where we are connecting the dots here, folks, but that's where having an efficient workout that is usually a boring workout is a struggle for some people. And, when I train, there's certain staples that I use, and I try to add a little variety to, because we're all a symptom of the culture, right? And we still get results, but you can't disregard the fact that, the boring workout is going to be the most effective workout.
If you can put up with it for a long period of time.
Right.
When I was at my strongest was whenever I did the exact same workout I had the same plan every week. I did the same workout every Monday, same every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, took Sunday off.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same thing every day, every week, for weeks, months, years on end, and I got the strongest I've ever been doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't need to mix it up in order to get any stronger. I just got a little bit, add a little bit more weight every time, and got the strongest I've ever been. And that's kind of always going to be my main recommendation to people. As long as your workout plan is structured in the right way. Now, if it's a crappy workout plan, then no, you don't want to do the same workout plan for months on end, because it's not going to get you anywhere. But if you have a really well-designed workout plan, it's kind of like, diversity. Now we're getting into a little bit. So I was listening to Warren Buffett talk one time about his investment strategy, and he talked about diversifying his investments. And he said, he's like, one investment is always going to be better than another. Like, no two investments are equally as good investments. And so he said, the only people that diversify their investments are people who don't know what they're investing in, because they diversify them because they have a lack of education. So they don't know which one's the best. He's like, if you're educated in what you're investing in, you should know what the best investments are. You should invest in those things, and you should double down on those things because those are the best investments. And he talked about how he had a very small number of stocks that he owned in his portfolio. It was like five to 10 stocks, something like that, instead of having, 500 different stocks he was invested in. I think it's the same thing where in your workouts, in your diet, if you know what the best exercises are to do, if you know what the best foods are to eat, then eat those things.
Exactly.
And work out with those exercises, because they're the best, then do those. Why waste it with an inferior exercise? If you know that a barbell bench press is going to put on more muscle than a dumbbell bench press, then why would you ever do dumbbell bench press? Now, actually, the data, that's another topic, because we go into what exercise is best for putting on muscle wear. But once you know that, then you structure your workout that way. And then you don't have to worry about all this, throwing in all this other stuff that's kind of just a distraction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, I've structured all my workouts like that, where usually my workouts will last 4 to 8 months, and then I'll adjust, like targeting particular muscle groups. But my workouts are pretty boring. It's always the same exercises.
What do you think about boring being comfortable? One of the things I think as humans is, like, I find a little bit of comfort in boring. Like, when I can walk in the gym and I say, you know what, I know what workout I have to do, because it's the same workout that I do every week on this day, and I've done it for so long. It's like, I'm home, almost. Mm-hmm. I don't have to put a lot of thought process into what I'm doing or the new stuff I'm trying to do or things like that. It's just comfortable. It's kind of like eating a meal, same thing. Like, I'm cooking the same old breakfast that I've cooked every day for 5 years. I know how to do it. It takes no thought. It's comfortable. It's comforting. It's like coming home. You come home, you want to come home to, the humans want to come home to the same place every night. Mm-hmm. They want that comfortability. They want that consistency.
Right.
They desire to come home to the same person every night, their spouse. They want to see them every night because we like that comfortability, that consistency, that routine, even a job. You go into the same job every day, getting up, going to sleep at the same times. There's an element of comfort there that I think people have lost with these new generations and with this new technology and the way that we're flashed with stuff. The society has taught us to crave something new and something different, but I think our natural instincts deep down as humans is to crave that consistency.
It's interesting you say that. My dad, when he was at his job, he started that job and he retired from that job.
That's rare nowadays.
Yeah. So that's where you're kind of getting into what we're talking about. I mean, it's not as simple as that, because there is, in some ways, people are treated like commodities these days. They're not treated with value, right? Like, a dime a dozen is a person, right? And so that's the other side of it, which again is a symptom of this lack of attention. And always, because what are we doing ultimately when we putting so much information in our mind? We're not pausing to experience silence. We're not enjoying being out in nature. We're not having those conversations with God. We're basically, there's a little bit of selfishness there, right? It's always about, I have to be entertained, right? That dopamine hit over and over and over in many different ways. And so there's a selfishness to it. So people become a byproduct and not someone we care about in the sense that we should care about. And, that's why, I was even talking to, one of our, Isaac this morning, where we were talking about how I hope, everyone understands, and we've talked about this on a podcast we did a year ago or two, that when someone does something great, I authentically am very excited for them. I'm invested in them as a human being, and I care deeply about them. And that's the way my dad wired me. And I think that's an element that gets lost, is that we start to treat people like they're not that important. And again, that's a symptom of our culture. And
yeah, we can miss out on a lot of the good things in life by being too self-centered.
Yeah,
and we don't see the benefits that putting somebody before ourselves. The benefit that can be. It's interesting to me. I hear people talk about not really complaining, but just there's a lot of people these days, they don't want to have children. They don't really want to be married or tied down. Or they talk about how difficult or kind of how hard it is, with kids, because they require so much, and it's such hard work. And you can speak to this more than me because I haven't had my first child yet.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a good thing that you're having to spend that time being selfless and focus on somebody else. And same thing with being married, right? Having another person that you're supposed to kind of put before yourself. That can be in the long run fulfilling. In the short term, it can be very hard. But if you ask people that have had children, sometimes in the moment when the kid's like 2 or 3, they're like, oh man, this is rough. But then when the kid gets older and the kid's like 18, 20, they're like, oh, it's the most fulfilling experience I ever had was having kids.
Right.
Same thing with marriage. You have people who maybe the first few years are tougher, or the 10, 15, whatever years, but then they get to 40 years and they look back and they're like, wow, this was the most growing experience that I could have had by putting somebody else first.
Right.
And I know, but same thing with me. If I were to do something for myself, like take money, for example, if I spend money on myself, how good do I feel about it versus if I help someone else with it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all probably experienced that a little bit. That good. It's very hard to do, but it's a good feeling whenever you use it on somebody else, and you kind of take yourself out of it.
It's interesting how we've kind of connected some dots here, and that is connecting that in the gym we deal with how people need variety, not only in the gym, but also in their diet, and that connects. They also need that variety in their life, and they need that variety. It goes on and on, and it's a symptom of a problem. These are all symptoms of a problem that's in our culture, and and I think me and you don't have the power to change this, right? But we have a power to control ourselves, and understand that when we put people first, our trainees first, that is an example. That is setting a example for them and for others that they're important, and reminds us, because I you've done it for me. There's times where you've made a decision said something that was an example for me. And it either reinforces or made me think a little bit differently. And these are positive things, right? And so our job is to, and the way I see it is our job is to go out and be positive forces in the world. And not only in the way that we train, but also in the way we live. And people get example of the way we live by how we communicate, the decisions we make. Because everything, it's like people, like when we would do certain things when we were working together in the gym, and a topic would come up, or we would be going somewhere, people already knew the decision that Parker was going to make. There was no, like, oh, what will Parker do with this decision? People knew. And that is setting an example, because, there's a reason he's so consistent, and people respect that. There's not an inconsistency to your decision making.
I think there's a big importance in leading by example over maybe leading with words. You can tell people all you want to do a certain thing, but if they don't really see you doing that, what does it mean?
Right.
And, I've always, I was kind of that way, like my senior year of high school. After my junior year, our football coach was fired, and we got a new football coach for my senior year. And so coming in senior year, he didn't really know. It was like a whole new coaching staff, and they didn't really know a lot of us. So we're getting into the summertime and going through workouts and OTAs, and started up practices and all this stuff. And then we did and I was never super vocal. I was always in the gym. I was always, like, I came to every workout, every practice, was there early, stayed late, like worked really hard. But I wasn't a vocal leader necessarily, right? But it came time to vote on captains, and I made captain for the varsity as a senior. And I remember, not that I don't remember like my coach saying he was surprised necessarily, but he just was like impressed, I guess, by the fact that without really being a vocal leader and being somebody that was always up talking to everybody, my teammates still had their respect. I still commanded their respect,
Yes.
and was what as captain. And that really taught me a lot about, oh wow, like my consistency and just coming in, working hard, and doing it, and people seeing that has as much of a profound effect, or maybe even more, than being a vocal leader, a vocal motivator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a important aspect in our lives, to have people that are, what I want to say, have fortitude in the decisions they make, consistent in the decisions they make. They're based on truth and ethics, right? So when you have someone who sticks to their ethics, and I mean ethics that are found in, rooted in, I'll be honest, gospel, then that's attractive. Everyone, it's kind of like, if I haven't been in the military, but my dad has, so I've had many discussions, but he said, you may hate that sergeant, but you'll respect him. He was tough on you. You may not agree with certain things or don't like him for certain reasons, but you respected him because he was absolutely consistent. And, so I think even I've come across this where people maybe didn't like me because of my personality, but there was respect there, right? There was a respect, even though I'm not their cup of tea.
Yeah, it's kind of like a competition, so if you're in a sporting event or something, you're competing against somebody, or there's a competition in business or something, and, the other person is working just as hard as you are, and maybe they beat you, and there's an element of you don't like them because they're beating you, but at the same time, you have a respect that they're out there working just like you are, and kind of like a may the better man win thing.
Yeah.
It's like a fighting match or something where the guys can be beating the crap out of each other in the fight because it's a competition, but then when it gets done, they raise one of the guy's arms and they hug and they're like, it's all good, you know, because the better man won. And that's how I like to approach life. You know, obviously if somebody uses maybe bad things in order to get something, to get ahead, then it's different, you know. But if somebody has fought fair and they've done something and they've won, I don't know, it's like I'm very, even if they beat me in something, I've always been very respectful of that. And then that's an example that you can learn from, right? Because okay, this guy beat me. Well, how did he beat me?
Right.
You know, and then I learned from him, for example.
Right.
You know, there was I can't remember. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but they were talking about two of the guys who were bodybuilders back in the day. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. But they were talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then they were talking about this other guy, and they said they were both very close competitors. But they said,
Were you talking about Lou Ferrigno?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But anyway, so Arnold, I guess, had a reputation for not being very helpful, not being the nicest competitor, because he saw it as, I'm competing against these guys. Like, I'm not going to give them any help, any information, anything like that. And then there's another guy who had that mindset of like, hey, if somebody asks me a question, I'm gonna come help them out. If they want to know how I train, I'll give away my secrets. Like, nothing's a secret. I want to help people succeed. And you know, they're like, well, that's kind of why Arnold won, is because he kept all his secrets to himself. He didn't really help other people out. He wasn't the nicest competitor, right? But this other guy didn't win because he gave away all his secrets, right? And other people were able to use him and build off of that. But at the same time, it's like, who feels more fulfilled? Does it make you feel more fulfilled to look back and say, and think about all these people that I helped, all these people that I educated? Maybe I didn't come in first, I didn't win the trophy, you know, but I got to help a lot of people, educate a lot of people, versus the other perspective that is, okay, like, I did what it took. I, you know, kept everything to myself and was very selfish so that I could win that first place. And now I have that medal, but maybe people don't look at me they look at me with respect, but for a different reason.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into another part that we were talking about is, you know, this need to be the best. And I want to be careful about this word, at any cost, because that's relative, but at a cost. And you know, and this is the other side of things, is that most of the people I train are, they're not going to be at any cost type of people. You know, they're just there to be in shape. They want to feel better. They want to have more energy. And so I don't have, there's maybe only been a couple people I've trained that are kind of going outside those bounds. Like, they're trying to get to a point by using aids, PEDs, and I guess that's kind of another topic is we're talking about longevity. We're talking about how do we stay healthy and do it naturally. And, you know, I know a number of people now, 20s, 30s, 40s, some are doing, TRT in their 20s, or even, 20s and 30s. And I don't technically think they really needed it at 20 some years old.
Well, I think if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're taking TRT in your 20s, there's a deeper question to ask, and it is, why do I need TRT in my 20s? Because you shouldn't.
Right.
And I think it's kind of just masking the problem, right? So there are things that you can do to help your testosterone levels if your testosterone levels are not where they should be for a 20-year-old. That doesn't involve injecting yourself with artificial testosterone.
Right. Yeah, and I speak, we're both at different age ranges, obviously, but, when I came got into fitness even more, which was becoming a trainer, I never considered that. I had a strong influence in my younger years. A friend of mine I went to college with, he's very close to me, and we don't get to see each other that much anymore, but he's a weight coach up at Iowa State. And he was considered one of the top athletes in the world for going to the Olympics when he was in high school. He was invited to the Japan Olympics as a senior, and because the U.S. Olympic Committee thought this guy's going to be an Olympian. And he was a weight guy. Shot putter, javelin, discus, and then he decides he wants to run the 100-yard dash as a senior in high school and win state.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, just hadn't ever ran it before in his life, and he just ends up being the fastest guy there. So he was a freak athlete. So he goes to Japan Olympics, does very well. He's there with another high school competitor, and Dan weighed about 10 pounds more than him. They both go off to college. They both get together later, like a year and a half later. And this competitor, his friend, is now 100 pounds heavier than he was before in a year. Yeah. So something's not right. And, he had a conversation with him at that time that was, if you want to compete on the world stage, you're going to have to do anabolics. And Dan, you could say Dan had the world at his fingertips, because his athleticism was off the charts. And if he takes this, he will be an Olympian without a doubt, because Dan was better than him in high school. And this guy that he worked with goes on, I'll mention his name. His name's Randy Barnes. Anyway, Randy Barnes goes on, wins medals in the U.S. Olympics, gets caught, and then cleans up, and then I think he wins a gold later on, if I'm not mistaken. But he got there by cheating, and Dan said, I will not put PEDs in my body. And that made a big influence on me, because I realized not only did he have the athleticism, but if he takes this one little drug, he'll be one of the best in the world, if not the best. And that impressed me that he was not willing to do that. That made a big impression on me at a young age. I was in college. And so because of that, I never even considered PEDs. So I get into training, and everyone around, there's a lot of that going on around me. A lot of it. A lot of the influencers you see online are on PEDs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like way over half. And so, since I had that attitude, I do it clean. I eat healthy. I eat the natural products that God gives us. And I'm 56, and I'm still pushing more weight than most of those guys that are not able to push, and even some that are on that. So
yeah, just because you take steroids doesn't mean you're all of a sudden going to lift a bunch of weight.
No,
still some work that goes in. But it's interesting. Earlier you brought up the FedEx culture and like needing it now, and I think that's what it boils down to a lot of times. I think you've shown that you can still reach some tremendous levels with a lot of hard work and dedication over a long period of time. Right. I think a lot of people's motivation is, I think it's two different things. You brought up the Olympics. Okay. You're probably right. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, to succeed, medal in the Olympics at an event like the shot put or javelin without anabolics, right? You cannot achieve the level that you desire to achieve without it. Mm-hmm. However, what we see a lot more just kind of in the everyday world is people who absolutely could achieve what they want to achieve naturally, but they decide to take the easier route, which is PEDs, instead of the hard work, the dedication, the diet, and the long time that it takes. They take the quick road out, take the easy road out. I think that's more commonly the motivation that we see for it. And that, to me, is a much easier decision Because if you're going to the Olympics and that's your goal, then your only option really to succeed there is to take PEDs.
Yeah.
This is not the case. People that want to, I want to be like pretty muscular. I'd like to bench 315, and then they like hop on PEDs. It's like, dude, you could do that. You could do that without PEDs.
Right. Right.
I think it's extremely detrimental, and I think we talk about longevity. It's the perfect thing to talk about with longevity, because I think what we see is sort of you're kind of, by taking PEDs, you're benefiting now, but you're sacrificing in the future.
Correct.
And there's a lot of science behind it. We don't really have time to go deep into the science today, but by taking PEDs at a young age, it's a hormone that your body is naturally producing, and if you're taking artificial injections, your body begins to shut down its natural production because it doesn't need it anymore, because it's getting these injections, and that's very difficult. If you ever wanted to stop taking anabolics at that time, it's very challenging to get your body to start back up its natural production at the level that it needs. And so it's kind of like sacrificing your body's natural production just to have some extra right now. And you can continue to take them and inject them, but it's one of those things you kind of are going to have to do for the rest of your life if you have been doing them even when you're young.
Well, and I think, I'll speak for myself. I'm not an expert on PEDs because I don't take them, and I've never planned on taking them. And, but I do have some understanding, and I think it's somewhat debated that if you're taking TAT and you're on them for a while, there's a question if the body is going to start them back up, like if you get off of them. Or that when you go off of them, it's such a detrimental effect to being so exhausted all the time that screw this, I'm going to get right back on them, right?
Yeah, there is an element of that I've found with people. That is, it's like a crutch that you start using, and then once you start using it, you can't go without it because you always know it's there.
Right.
Like, oh man, this is harder. Like you take them and it's easy. You get off of them and it gets harder. And so then why would you not go back to the crutch that you've always used?
Right. Right. Well, you find that it's kind of one of those things. I mean, when you have adequate testosterone levels, you're going to have more energy. You're going to have, get through the day, get things done that you need to get done. And when you're tired, you're not as productive, and you might not be able to get the things done you need to get done. So there is an element, a practical, pragmatic element to having testosterone that helps you function day in and day out. And so, if you're messing around with that natural ability to produce it, then that's when the crutch comes in, because you have to be able to function in life.
Yeah, you need that as a male. You need a certain amount of testosterone, and if you don't have it, you are going to suffer.
Right.
But I do think, the first place people normally go, and this is a big problem in our society, in the medical industry, right? If you go to the doctor and one of your levels or something's out of whack, the first thing they do is want to prescribe you medication.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing with TRT. So you go to the doctor, maybe your testosterone test's low. Oh, okay, we'll just give you some injections.
Yeah, which is another problem. Yeah.
And that's a systemic problem in our medical system.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are ways to fix it now, just like there are ways to help your blood pressure or your cholesterol or your A1C or things like that. There are ways to help that naturally. There are ways to help your testosterone naturally too. One of the things, I've always kind of thought about it from a very logical standpoint, like, okay, take testosterone. I want to have high testosterone levels. I don't want to take them artificially. So how do I make sure my body can produce enough? Well, testosterone is something your body produces, but it's not something that your body intakes. So if you think about, eventually your body gets to testosterone, but it doesn't start there from what you eat. So there has to be a process that takes place. There has to be a chemical reaction. There has to be a formula that goes into what is testosterone. So I looked up, okay, what makes testosterone in your body? And some of the biggest ingredients are cholesterol and saturated fats. Those are some of the biggest indicators into production of testosterone. in your body. And so my thought was always, well, I need to make sure I maximize the ingredients that go into making testosterone if I want to make sure that I have enough.
Right.
And so that's been one of my focuses, is if I can get healthy cholesterol, healthy saturated fats, I'm going to maximize testosterone. Well, what's the best sources of healthy cholesterol and healthy saturated fats? Red meat, eggs, dairy products, all those things that we've been talking about people
Right.
should eat.
Right.
So what I've found myself is by eating a diet, the healthy diet of the things that we've been talking about eating, I haven't had any problem. Now, I'm also young, so that's a different story, but I think it also speaks to you as well. Most people your age, well, maybe not most people, but I would say most people your age doing what you do in the gym are on some sort of PEDs.
Right.
You're not, and so I think we have to look at what do you do in order to get there, and you talk about your diet, how strict you are there, your routines, your consistency, and I think that's the answer right there, is to say, look what you do and what you can get without PEDs, and if people would be willing to do that stuff, then they wouldn't need them.
Right. Right. And I think it was, let's put it this way, like some of my goals that I wanted to reach took me 2 years, okay, consistently, day in, day out, and so when you think about that, that's patience, hours and hours and hours in the gym, right? And I had someone tell me one time, she goes, "Man, just take Tren and you'll be there in a month." And I thought, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Well, that takes us back to something that we've talked about before on past episodes, and it's the process is the goal, right? The goal, I mean, obviously you wanted to reach your goal. Your 405 bench, we've talked about it before.
Right.
You want to reach that, but the process is also the goal. When we talk about longevity, the process of getting to longevity is our goal if we're talking about longevity. What is the process to get there? The process to get there is clean diet, consistent working out, consistency in your habits, all those things. That's also the type of thing that's going to get you to 405. It's going to take you a while, but why get there quicker? Let's say, for example, you took the anabolics you needed to take to bench 405 and you bench 405 next month. Mm-hmm. Then what?
More?
Exactly. Then you say, well, I don't know, maybe bench 500, and then you take more. And
Right.
That's what we find is a big problem, is when the process gets artificially sped up and people get it instantly, then they just want to go further and go more. I would argue that I think you'll get there eventually, but you might actually be better off if you never get to 405.
Yeah.
You know why? Because you're so focused on your habits, your diet, your workouts being so consistent to try to get there that what you're creating is yourself being super healthy and creating longevity for yourself by keeping these habits and doing these things. And if you got to your goal and then you quit, well, now that starts to go away.
Right.
So by constantly having something to chase that you can't quite attain, it kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy, in that this longevity and this health will kind of fulfill itself. Give yourself something to chase other than just the health in of itself.
I think another thing is it's not that that's really important, but if you take anabolics and you get there in a month versus 2 years or 3 years, it's kind of a lack of respect for the weight or the accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's because, anything that you put a ton of time into, you respect.
Yeah.
If you get it like it's not that big a deal, then there's a lack of respect for the accomplishment. And so it's just like anything. I treat, I've hit some certain goals with my overhead and press, and recently starting to get my legs up there. But I respect the work and in the weight that I'm moving because I know what it took to get there, you know. And I think there's something, and it also puts things in perspective for me. If I got there real quick, I think it's like that FedEx mindset. It's like, well, 405, 435, 435, 455.
Or I got this quick, everything else should come quick too.
Exactly.
And then other parts of your life, we talk about how fitness and health bleed into all the other parts of your life.
Right.
So if you start getting goals really quick and really easy in the gym because you're taking PEDs, and now you think, well, I should also get this goal of, something, a goal I have in family or goal I have in career or money or something like that should also come easy. And you're not willing to put in as much work because you didn't have to put in as much work to get this goal in the gym.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, it's right. It's a symptom of the culture,
So then you're constantly kind of looking towards the easy way out. I don't know. That's kind of how I've always approached it is, I know for a fact that I have not capped out my potential of what I could do naturally. Mm-hmm. And so that's always been my thing is I'm like, I know I can do more naturally. I'm not going to take PEDs or cheat to get at a higher level because I can get there without it.
Right.
And I want to challenge myself, and I want to put myself through these hard things. I want to put myself through the consistency over time, because that's just what it takes to win at life. Mm-hmm. Is just, and I've always tried to treat the gym as sort of a metaphor to life, and taking PEDs would be taking the easy way out, and I want to take the easy way out in life.
And just to throw on top of that, let's not deny the fact that when you take PEDs, you're rewarded for it. Not only in the accomplishment, but by your peers. And so when you make the choices not to do things the natural way, then you understand that the accolades probably are not going to be as great. You're not going to get the following. You're not going to win the race or win the lifting competition, but you can lay your head down at night and be guilt-free about it. It's like, because there's more important things than lifting. We both agree with that, right? Family, God, this is what we do. Basically, personal training is just a vehicle for us to, do God's work. Okay, that's all it is for us. And so when it comes to, when we start that, I think that's when we start getting that FedEx mindset, that's when we're starting to put something in front of God.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great quotes there. I can't wait to cut this up.
Yeah. And, that's one of those things too, is there's a lot of data out there to show that longevity and PEDs are antagonists. They work against each other.
Yes.
A lot of people that have died very young.
Well, look at the bodybuilding industry. They've had a huge rash of people that have died in the last 10 years, 40s and 50s.
Yeah, because the effects on your body, there are positive effects, such as getting stronger, getting bigger much more quickly, but there's a cost for that, right?
Right.
If it seems too good to be true, there's always a catch. And
Yes.
there's a catch to it, and the destruction it does to the inside of your body and things like that. Like if you look at autopsies of people who have been on PEDs for a long period of time and died very prematurely, I mean, it's some scary stuff. So, and that's not to say that, and that those are at highly abusive levels.
Yes, of course.
Right.
The bodybuilding industry is the extreme for sure.
Exactly. And what we're talking about, when we're talking about TRT, we're talking about more of like taking levels that are under where you should be and raising them up to levels of where you should be. Mm-hmm. I think our argument is you can probably do that without taking PEDs.
Yeah.
But, your levels should be in the normal range. However, they should not be above normal.
Right.
And that's when the abuse comes into play.
I think it would be good. You said something before we started the show, and I think it would be good to quantify how you view, you know, anabolics, you know, testosterone replacement, and, you know, just AIDS in general, and how you quantified that before we started. I think that'd be a good description for everybody to hear.
In what way?
I mean, like, you know, how you put them into categories. You said, you were talking about how you viewed performance enhancing drugs, and you kind of said, this is how I view them. And I can't remember how you stated it because it was eloquent. I'm slaughtering it.
Well, I wish I could remember it then. But, I mean, I would just say in general, performance enhancing drugs are going to take you to a level beyond where you should be naturally, obviously. TRT is more going to try to take you up to the level of where you should be naturally, but it's doing it in an artificial manner. By AIDS, what AIDS are you specifically referring to?
You know,
there?
there's AIDS could be anything from, you know, peptides, or, you know, the slingshot, or, you know, those are the type of AIDS.
Oh, yeah. Well, boy, now we go into a whole nother thing, because like a slingshot, you know, if you used for people that don't know, a slingshot is basically a thing you wear across your chest that can help you bench a little bit more weight.
Right.
Well, if you wore the slingshot for every single rep of every single bench that you ever did, no, right? I don't agree with that at all, because that would be similar to like PEDs, where you're just helping everything and you're just raising the bar one more level. Because then where does that lead from there? You ever seen the guys that do the equipped powerlifting? This is why I think equipped powerlifting is such BS, because dudes just get bigger and bigger things that help them lift more weight. And next thing you know, they're wearing this shirt that helps them bench hundreds of more pounds than what they could bench without it.
They walk out like this.
Yeah, like what's the point of that?
Right.
And so I think it's just like PEDs, where a little bit turns into a lot more, and all of a sudden we have what we have now, where you watch the Mr. Olympia and these dudes are just so massive, where, I mean, it's insane. It's nowhere near naturally possible for a human being to achieve that. It's almost just stupid, right? And it's the same thing with equipped powerlifting. And so like a slingshot, as long as it's used as a tool for a desired effect, where, you know, you want to have that effect in certain aspects of your training for trying to increase your natural bench press, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're just using because, I'm going to use it every time because I can bench more. Okay, well now, look, I got this shirt. Now I can bench even more with it. And I got this new thing. And now I got this new thing. And next thing you know, you're benching 1,000 pounds. But it's like the equipment's doing most of it for you.
Right.
So what's really the point? And I mean, I think that's a really good comparison to PEDs, where it's doing a lot of it for you. So what's the point?
Well, I think it's also is in mental preparation too. You know, at one time I considered smelling salts, right, to get me mentally, you know.
Yeah.
But I've learned that when it's time to go, I can just turn it on.
Exactly.
You know, I don't have to sit there like, man, I'm kind of down. Let me smell these salts. Whoa, you know, I do that naturally. You know, you've seen it yourself, where I'm sitting there, and you know, if I have a heart monitor on, I'm literally raising it 30 beats a minute.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting there as I'm prepping my mind. Yeah. And I know that every time I get under something heavy, everyone around me disappears. I don't even hear what's going on. It's just me and my spotter, and all I'm thinking about is me and that weight. And I mean, and it's funny because I go back and watch videos later as I hear all this noise around me going on. I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was myself.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I don't know if you hear me or not, but usually I'm the one spotting you when you're going for a max, and I'm kind of talking to you the whole time, trying to motivate and hype you up. I don't know if you hear it or not, but I do.
Yeah, I think a couple times there was I think in one of my earlier benches, you got my attention. You slapped me on the chest pretty hard. I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm really ready to go, you know. But yeah, a lot of times I did. I mean, I'll hear my spotter, which has usually been you, and but I don't hear anyone else. And then I'll hear later, so God, a lot of people were cheering me on. I wasn't even hearing that. but that's that, I'm not taking the aid of like smelling salts to mentally prepare myself.
I ran into the same thing with like pre-workout. I used to take pre-workout way back many years ago, and it works for its desired purpose. I will definitely put that out there. It would get me amped up and get me ready to go for a workout. But then I got to a point where I finally asked myself, why is it that I need this crutch in order to get me amped up for a workout? Mm-hmm. Right? Why can't I just do that on my own? What is the issue? And then I began to take the perspective of, if I need pre-workout in order to have a good workout and get me amped up for a workout, then something else is wrong that I need to look at. And this is just masking the problem, right? Maybe I didn't sleep good enough. Maybe I'm not in the right headspace, not getting myself motivated enough, whatever it may be. And from that point forward, I never needed pre-workout. And there's been a time or two since then where I've like maybe taken a scoop just because someone gave it to me, and I'm like, I didn't really feel any different.
Yeah.
It didn't really help me any, because I was able to kind of figure out how to get the desired effects on my own. And a lot of this stuff is, a lot of other supplements I think are the same way, where it's like, you don't really need it. It doesn't really, it's kind of almost like a little bit of placebo. Mm-hmm. And you take it and you think it works because you take it. It doesn't work because of something that's actually inside of it.
Right. Yeah. No, earlier in my career as me working out on my own and me as a trainer, I've slowly weeded off a lot of the supplements I used to take. Now I find I get some positive results before a workout with salt water. I drop a teaspoon.
More natural.
Yeah, and it does wake me up. I'm like, I put it in, start drinking it, get a little bit in about 15, 20 minutes. I'm more awake now.
Yeah.
And I do that every morning, because, I'm getting at the gym at 4:45 in the morning. So, I need to like a little, it kind of stimulates me.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of topics there, talking about longevity today, but hit a lot of different things along the way. Good stories too today. I always like bringing those up, reminiscing on the past a little bit. Matt, you got anything else you want to add for the group today?
No, I think that was a good discussion. It kind of segued into other aspects that are just, they're all kind of tied together.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of covered the gamut there, and but that was a fun one.
Yep. Okay, so guys, make sure if you have any questions or you have any topic ideas, make sure to reach out. You can contact us. Matt, want to drop your email?
Yeah, cpt.kansascity@gmail.com.
Yep, and I think pretty soon we should be having these episodes up on social media too. You'll be able to reach out to us on Instagram, YouTube, places like that as well if you want to.
Everything's a process, guys. I just did our intro and outro recording last few days ago. And so we're slowly, we're both working full-time jobs. So, we'll get this more refined as we move forward.
Yep, absolutely. It's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. Well, guys, we really appreciate you being with us. We're very excited to be bringing this to you guys every week, and we look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Take care, guys.
Hey, look at you. You've completed another milestone by finishing this episode of Loading the Bar. Your future self thanks you profusely. Loading the Bar is podcasted from Kansas City, Missouri. Email us at cpt.kansascity@gmail.com. Forge ahead and share your progress, and we'll see you back here for another episode of Loading the Bar.